Hello comrades, it's Captain Communist here, and today I'm going to explain to you all why I will not fight for Queen and country, and why I think you shouldn't either. Now, there may be some viewers who are thinking to themselves, of course he hates Britain, he's a communist. I need to lay that to rest. Because my nationality is British, I was born in Britain, and I need to say that there are lots of things that I love about my country. First of all, I am very proud of the fact that Britain has produced some of the world's most historic literature. I am also very proud of the fact that Britain produces some of the best scientists and engineers. I am very proud of the fact that Britain was the first country out of the 2 or 3 in the world to get rid of feudal exploitation. I am, of course, referring to the 17th century revolution, as nobody remembers Oliver Cromwell, but he is one of my heroes. Britain was one of the first countries that taught the world that if a king did not behave, he would find that he either went on journeys abroad or alternatively he was beheaded. Oliver Cromwell and his followers were as much hated in some parts of Britain, particularly Europe, as subsequently the Bolsheviks were after 1917. I am also proud of the fact that Britain was one of the first ones to produce the first revolutionary working class party. So, this video is not to say that everything about Britain is bad. However, I cannot be proud of the fact that my country has for so long acted as an executioner of other people's liberties. I shall not fight as a soldier to execute other people's liberties. If tomorrow I was asked to go to Saudi Arabia to save the Saudi regime in the interests of British capitalists, my answer would be, no, I will not go. Now, I'm not a pacifist. I'm not opposing war because I'm a pacifist, as there are wars that I have referred to, such as the English Civil War that happened in the 17th century, which was a war against feudalism to get rid of the old oppressors and move society on the road to progress. I am in favour of those sorts of wars. And if I was around in the 1640s as a soldier, I would have certainly been in Cromwell's army. There are also wars for national liberation. Colonies have fought against colonialists. They have fought wars of liberation. I am fully in favour of the colonised people fighting their wars of liberation. And most of these people were called terrorists in their own time, only to be reinstated as national leaders and welcomed by His Majesty or Her Majesty. There are also wars for socialism. I am well and truly in favour of a civil war in which the working class fights it out in order to get to power and say to the bourgeoisie, you've had 300 years, now it's our turn. But then there are imperialist wars. They are not wars of freedom. These are wars of plunder. These are wars of spoliation. These are wars of domination. These wars are precisely imperialist wars, such as the war on Afghanistan or Iraq, for instance. But we are given all kinds of reasons to deny that. One of the first reasons we were given was 9/11. First of all, nobody can actually say that 9/11 was carried out by the Afghan government or the terrorist group Al-Qaeda. But even if you say that they did it for the sake of argument, 9/11 is no good reason. The United States of America has committed 9/11s on a scale far higher than anyone else has committed. The USA has gone all over the world and bombed people. Does it make sense for British and US soldiers to be kicking down doors in Iraq and Iran, pulling women and children out of their houses and beating them up? That is just as outrageous as the members of ISIS doing exactly the same thing here in Britain. We were given the reason that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, but it turned out Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction. Even if Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, that would be no reason to wage war against them, or any other country, because the countries that possess the greatest arsenal of these weapons are the United States, France, Britain, Russia and China. I am well in favour of universal, non-discriminant nuclear disarmament. But until we disarm, countries such as Iraq and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea have as much right to have nuclear weapons as the United States and Britain do. Who are the countries that have used nuclear weapons? The only country in the world that has actually used nuclear weapons is the United States. The United States has used nuclear weapons on Japan. not to secure Japan's surrender, because the Soviet Union defeated Japan in Manchuria, and Japan was on its way to begging for peace, because Japan's time was up. The bomb was used against Japan to basically make sure that the Japanese would only surrender to the United States, and not to the Soviet Union, so that there would be no socialism in the far eastern part of the world. However, that didn't happen, because China became socialist in 1949. The second reason for this was to actually issue a warning to the Soviet Union, because the United States alone had possession of the nuclear weapons. So they basically said to the Soviets, if you don't behave, that's what will happen to you. Well, that didn't happen, because 4 years later, the Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb, and the Chinese Revolution succeeded. So, to say that others are irresponsible is just ridiculous, because it is the United States who is irresponsible, as they are the only country to have committed murder with this horrible weapon, the nuclear weapon. So, I'll say it again, that is no reason for waging war against anyone. Secondly, we are told that we want to bring democracy. You should really check your intelligence if you think that Britain brings democracy to other countries, because why not bring democracy to Israel? The Jewish population of Israel oppresses the Palestinian population. Why not bring democracy to Saudi Arabia? In Saudi Arabia, they beat women up if they go and have a little drive around the country. Imperialism has nothing to do with human rights. It has nothing to do with democracy. Imperialism strives for domination. Imperialism does not drive for freedom. So, to sum it all up for you, I will not fight for the Queen and country, because I am not the type of guy who would put on a tin hat and start marching through Syria, Iraq or Afghanistan, taking other people's liberties to keep the ruling elite over here in Britain happy.